Adrienne, you want to say hi?
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope everyone has had a good breakfast today as we hear about Robbie's breakfast. I'm thinking, Bill, that people got a chance to watch the webinar with AT&T, Frontier, and Comcast from last time, which I thought was a very dynamic presentation. Gives you a sense of where the big companies are coming from and what they're offering. And so today we're going to, I think, spend time in kind of back and forth in big and small groups talking about providers, right, Bill?
Providers and all things accelerate.
There we go.
So when I created the Accelerate program on behalf of the Blandin Foundation, now almost a couple of years ago, we had these off weeks where we didn't really have topics and speakers, and we just ended up having conversations with the communities. And then in your always constant quest for improvement, I started adding content into some of these weeks, additional speakers. But I think, in retrospect, and maybe this is convenient thinking because I kind of failed. The providers are so busy, I couldn't really bring folks on this week. Thought, well, let's go back to the roots a little bit and have a little more community conversation, inter-community conversation. So that's what we're going to do today, is get you in this first hour, get you out of your meeting rooms and into meeting people from across Illinois to discuss how things are going, what you're learning, what has been a surprise or most interesting thing you've learned as teams, and just really do some exploration there and learn from each other. I think before we started today, John Bechtold was telling us about the Central Illinois Regional Broadband Network and incredibly strong knowledge and practice expertise there. And we've got a lot of additional expertise on the calls here. But I think everyone can contribute. We can learn from each other. So we're going to spend some time with that in the first
Bill,
hour.
I was going to say, I don't mean to call anybody out, but I believe Deb from Comcast is on this call. So even though she may not be speaking today, she is available as a resource. Hey,
Good
Deb,
morning.
Thanks for being here. Okay, great.
Thank you. And but I'd like to go around the room and see how things are going in the various counties. So Alina, do you want to lead off and tell us what's going on in Livingston?
We've been pretty busy here. We obviously launched our survey. We've been trying to do a social media push. We sent out postcards earlier this week to about 4,500 residents, trying to target different areas of the county. Been working on the provider contact list, trying to get that in order so we can divide up who's going to make contact with each individual business. We thought we kind of split the baby there. Of course, that's a little bit premature because we haven't finalized the interview sheet, and we were using Serban as our test just because they're a community partner of ours. And so it's good for us to be able to work with them and get some feedback from them on how those questions come off and if we're getting the right type of information or not.
Good. Well, thank you. And I think we have some communities spend a lot of time trying to mold that questionnaire, but I always like to look at it as especially this first conversation is really about attitude and fit and kind of understanding their philosophies a little bit, as opposed to like evaluation and the decision making. So just remember that these partnerships with providers take time. It's not going to just jump at you the first, yeah, let's go, let's get this done. And people say yes. And so be patient with that relationship building. They say that things move at the speed of trust. And so building a little trust with those providers as you go is really important. Good. Well, thanks for that. How about Bond County?
We are a little ahead on our survey, so we've been able to start digesting some of the data, some really good data to see how we are so cellular driven here. We are also actively working on hopefully have a good conversation with one of our local co-ops. This could be a new venture for all of us, and so we're excited about a conversation next Wednesday with them.
Good, good. Thank you for that. And as you looked at the survey results, how we're reading some of those comments, do you guys have anything fun or interesting come out of the comments?
They've all given up on WISPs. It's been too problematic, so everyone's fallen back to cellular coverage out in the real rural spaces. And there's still some areas that is working, but a large part people have given up on the WISPs. So we'll have to figure out how to revitalize those.
Yeah, that's interesting, whether that's a tech challenge or whether it's an operational challenge of the provider just not being very good.
I think it has a lot to do with the backhaul into our space is all wireless driven. So it's a very poor backhaul. And so people are getting, 1 meg, 2 meg downloads, and that just doesn't cut it.
Okay, good. Thank you. And Kankakee, Dell, how's it going?
Things are going well here. Looking at our surveys are out there. Results aren't coming back as much as we would like. I think we've only got about 50 or 60 surveys back. So we have I talked to our media officer yesterday about stepping up, getting the word out there. So she's got a few ideas for that. Well, interestingly though, it is the results are all over the county. There's no one particular area. They're coming back from everywhere. And a lot of them, it's not just homes. We've got business and agriculture in the list too. I wasn't able to make last week's meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but I think we are going to be moving forward with a interview process of some sort. I think they worked out the questions last week. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We are having discussions with our decision makers too, and informing them of what's going on.
Good.
We're going to have a meeting with them in the next few weeks as well.
Thanks, Dell. Let's hear from Pierre Woodford.
Morning.
Morning.
Thanks, Bill. This is Kathy. We're continuing to make, I think, really great progress in both counties. Our surveys have had pretty strong response. I haven't had a chance to really debrief with Nancy around it, although she and her team have done some remarkable troubleshooting with some technical problems that we've had with our instrument. But I think all in all, we have really good data. Looks like a cross section of the county. And I like that we kind of tweaked that demographic question to know we have a good sense of how the ag community is engaging with the survey. I think the other thing that I'll just call out the work of Grace and our communications team in utilizing social media. So they internally within the Greater Peoria EDC, they went to work creating these posts. And then we made a list of those posts and shared them out with our project team. And it really phenomenal numbers of reshares. And I'm waiting for the communications team to kind of aggregate that, but it's in the hundreds. So we've, I think that utilizing social media is a learning experience for all of us, but our team has really done a remarkable job there. The other thing that has happened is we're beginning to have some offline conversations trying to ready for when the survey results are out and ready for conversation. And we'll be doing some preliminary reporting on the survey findings, not final, as early as next week. So we've got meetings with the county boards. And the reason that we went ahead and wanted to go ahead and do that is just really, as you're saying, Bill, all of this is a conversation. And every time we talk about this, we build our common understanding and kind of common direction. So I think it will be valuable for us. It'll probably be brief in both situation, one's to the full board, the others to a committee within the county board structure in Peoria, but still informative and really will help to set the path or direction. One final activity that our team has been involved in, collaboratively working with the Woodford County Board, has drafted a document, a letter that they're going to submit to the county board, just really emphasizing the important role of broadband to agriculture. And so, you know, we were able to pull information from the Benton study that went into that letter. And then also we've looked at the broadband maps that Shabinka shared in it. You know, really spells out the number of households in Woodford County that are not or underserved. So trying to use the data and information to continue to shape conversations.
Good. It sounds like you're doing a great job on your communications planning and implementation and getting those, you know, many times the secret is repetition too on this messaging, right? It's not a one time, oh, we told you all about that, you should get it. It's frequency of communication is super important. Let's go to Kaskaskia.
Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes,
No,
George.
you can? All right. I'm just playing tag with my microphone this morning. The group's done a really good job. I have to commend this group, specifically Cheryl Brinkman, Steve Fouch, George Chris, and others, Mary Gay from the Leadership Council. I believe we've gotten close to 450 responses to our survey so far. And Mary went as far as to identify areas that we are weak in survey responses and color coded a map for us. So we're going to have we have 8 days remaining on the survey itself. So we're going to be having a focused push in some of those other areas, but we're also going to have an internal discussion about a couple of the areas that have been invited and expressed willingness to participate in the group, but we haven't had much contact with them since the inception of the start of the class. So I think we may be narrowing down our focus to Marion and Clinton counties. And obviously, I think that there's still that strong collaborative spirit with Bond County as well. But we may be trimming down our focus to those that are really put forth the effort and energies moving forward. So that's probably for some internal discussion for us today. But I'm looking forward to pushing the survey a little bit more and getting some more results.
Good. And it's a coalition of the willing is always an important concept in organizing. That's something you can spend a lot of energy trying to convince people to come on board that maybe aren't quite ready to come on
Right.
board and so
Right.
on. And so you march forward with the folks you have and hopefully demonstrate success.
Agreed.
And can bring people on at a later date. So good. Thank you for that, George. And Ogle.
Hi, Chris Manheim here. Pat's, I am you.
Turn your volume down. Did you echo?
All right, yeah, just got a little technical difficulties here. Yeah, our participation overall, Mike Delaney's been tracking it for us. So far, we have 89 in Ogle, which is up from a few days ago, 247 from Lee County, which is up considerably from 162 a few days ago. Pam already reported from Boone that I have 13 listed. And Putnam County is doing well too with 86. So not quite as fast as we'd like to see it in Ogle County, but overall, yeah, we're getting some synergy there.
Good. And you guys, with those numbers, you know, it's important, you know, and Nancy's a survey guru here, but, you know, if you can get like 400 surveys, you know, you're going to get a pretty good feel for your community. So thinking, you know, now where do people gather? Where can you spread that word? um, I'd really look at that and say, how can we beef up those numbers? So it's really important that we have, you know, good numbers and good solid information from the provider interviews, you know, when we go into that planning sessions in weeks 12 and through 13. So really look at that as your target date for kind of having your information gathered and considered and using that as a platform for strategy development. Good. Thanks for those updates and thank you for the work that your teams are doing. I think some of the teams have done a great job using schools, even during summer, to push out the messaging. The school districts have ongoing conversations with their families, especially now they'll be thinking back to school, as sad as that sounds, for summertime, but to use their text messaging systems, mailings, and so on to get out a lot of to get that word out. Thanks. We're now going to go to our breakout rooms, and it's Nancy's just going to put us in rooms randomly. So I know some of the groups where Bond or Kaskaskia College, where you have multiple people in the room, you get bonus people in your groups there. But we're just going to go in there and really for I'm going to have a conversation for about 15 minutes. Come back at we're going to alter my calendar here a little bit, but about 9:05 we'll come back. But just have a conversation around the room, make sure everyone get a chance to talk and appoint somebody to report. But what's been the most surprising or interesting thing you have learned about community broadband so far? And so Nancy, if you want to put us into the rooms and friendly, interesting conversations, we hope, between all the participants. So feel free to jump in and get those conversations going. Go ahead. We're just going to spend a minute or so.
Kind of how Bond County's have done to target their survey after their yard signs. Stuff like that. That was really good to hear. They seem like they're on top of it. It's nice interacting with the other folks.
Good.
Yeah, we learned a lot. I learned a lot as well from Bond County and their approaches to getting their surveys, from creating maps where deficit areas needed, where they needed surveys most, that they shared with their constituents, as well as developing like phone trees or phone centers to reach out to people, and putting posters or signs in various areas of street signs to encourage people to link to the surveys.
Yeah, and you know, and I think the base survey, there's a spot to say, hey, if you want to help with us, you know, give us your check your box here. And many times people do say, hey, we're willing to help. And that's on see where they live, and then say, hey, can you go cover maybe it's your township, and drive around and try and promote this, or even a neighborhood where it's one-on-one. You know, even we've had cases where people go around with a iPad and just do the survey right at people's doors in the past. So that's a great way to kind of harvest those champions that can be a part of your effort. Sometimes we ask people for help and then we don't really ask them. We said, who wants to help? But we don't assign them anything. You can say, hey, go spend next Saturday morning just trying to get 10 more surveys. Good, thanks. Great job, Bond County. Superstars on the survey. So other comments people want to share from what they learned?
Bill, Chris Manheim here. There, I turned that off again. All right.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback.
One thing that came up that impressed me was the setting up a Facebook ad, or even creating a group. as well as the low tech, which is Pat was suggesting, continuing using more signs and whatever for posting across the communities. But the Facebook group sounded like that would reach a lot of folks, and it's fairly inexpensive to set up.
Yeah, and using social media that people is on Facebook is big, and if you can, look and see if you within your own community, just Google, or not Google it, but on Facebook, search for your own county name or community names. You might find 20 different existing groups that you could post on there to get that information out through existing groups. Going where people are is always an easier strategy than trying to bring people to you.
Right.
So if you can think about those, whether they're churches or scouts or schools or chambers of commerce, any number of those kind of groups, senior citizens, county Facebook pages, cities, really make use of those to get the word out. Good. We're going to go right back into the groups again here. I'll give Nancy a moment notice. Again, we're going to go randomly. And this time the question is, what are you most interested in learning more about? And so in our group, we had a question about how do you find a good grant writing consultant who's can really help bring home the bacon, bring home the money, and having that application. Some of these programs are quite specific, like there's a USDA Reconnect 4 is coming up, and I'll when we come back for final session, I'll post a link to a webinar that's coming up on this Reconnect from USDA. If you don't have every piece of paper and form done correctly, they won't even read your application. And so that's getting that done correctly with an experienced grant writer is an important thing. So that was a great thing to bring up that maybe we'll try and touch on here in the weeks ahead in the financing side. So Nancy, let's go back into groups and hopefully we'll get some additional mixing, and we won't go back into the same random group we had before, but we'll give this a try. So thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. I can see it shuffle every time I click recreate. So
Good.
It looks like everybody's mixed really well, and go ahead and join. I'm going to pause the recording.
About grant writing and kind of how to make that happen.
This meeting is being.
We also talked about the more information, maybe reinforcement about the government role, ownership and operations or partnerships, open access requirements. And so we will definitely hit more of that in the individual sessions with the communities. At the end of the program, I spend either 1 or 2 2-hour meetings with each community, and we can delve into that. But we'll also hit that again as we go. The idea of dealing with rural and phases in rural counties and how to deal with that kind of challenges. And then a little bit of middle mile as a strategy. What other topics did people come up with?
Bill, can I ask a question of Shabika and that was raised in my group that might be interesting for everybody?
Sure.
So one of the people in my group said, well, we just discovered that one part of our county has a fiber provider, but they weren't on the map. Why is that?
Sure. So about that, it also depends on the provider. So this was the maps that we have are from our outreach in November 2021. So that is when the data was collected. So one of the possibilities could be, which is not so much a possibility, but they did not really report it then, because I'm guessing, it was there in November because it's right now, it wouldn't be all that fast. So that could be one of the reasons. And if we get the name, I can check if that's like a participating provider with us, just to make sure that we collect information from them.
So Delbert, I think you could provide the name of the provider to Shubika and she could look it up for you. You were the one that
Yes.
asked, right,
Yeah, I
Delbert?
can. I
Okay,
don't have their name offhand here, but yes, I can provide that to her.
that's great. I
Sure.
just
And
thought-
then we can check if, it is one of our participating providers. And again, if there's any time that you face this sort of a thing that, one of the providers that you do have is not showing up on the map, what you can do is there's like a feedback feature on the map itself where we record any such responses where you might see discrepancies with what's really on ground. So if you share that in the next iteration of the maps, we'll just go there, validate and see if it's there and make sure that we add it to the map.
Just to facilitate the collection of topics and questions, if people who brought them up in the meetings, if you just want to put them into the chat over the next couple minutes, now would be the time to do so. I really appreciate that. And we'll try and hit those questions as we go. But we need to do that before you get into your community rooms.
So somebody did ask about the nature of public-private partnerships. And so Robbie has posted a publication from Benton about that. And I think, Bill, there's a big general question about funding, and I said that's coming up in our sessions. So state and federal funding and local financing. And also there was a question just about the grant writing in general. So we spent more time on that.
Okay, good. Ted, we did hand out a list of questions. I don't know if you've seen that. And in a past cohort, we saw somebody, they probably had like 45 questions that they came up with. And, very specific, what's your quality of service level? How many nines do you have in your reliability numbers, and some extremely technical things that you can ask, but a lot of times they'll say, what? They might not even know, or they wouldn't want to necessarily answer at initial stages and so on. I don't see any other, very few questions. Good. We talked about this a little bit yesterday in Ohio, is I always like to go to their Facebook page, and there's a certain company here in Minnesota, a large company, that if they post, oh, I hope you have a great weekend, and there'll be 300 comments that say, well, I would if my internet worked. And, if your customers are venomous on Facebook, that's probably a bad sign if they're your new public-private partner. And so to check out kind of not only their community engagement in their community, but also then the comments from the providers to the providers on their pages. So that's a great, that's a very informal, but I think a great way to see it. And you definitely see it's not all the providers will vary greatly on that. Digital equity is a great question. And, we don't really spend a lot of time on that in this Accelerate program because we want to focus on the infrastructure, but certainly, getting broadband everywhere, getting it to have affordable networks and so on, that's important. Fixed wireless, we're going to capture this chat, and Nancy, if you can do that, that would be really helpful for me. Good. The fixed wireless fiber hybrid models, that's a great thing. And Robbie's got Benton's got a publication for everything. So, and I have to say that if you use Google and type in your specific questions, it's amazing the kind of information that comes out of those search engines. That's very applicable to your team. Good. Well, thank you. We know that you have a lot of work to do, and so we're going to let you get to it in your breakout sessions and by community. And so Nancy's going to open up those rooms, and you can adjourn as you want to do that. And our staff, our team will be around and joining your groups as always. Any questions or comments before we go? Good. My final note is, and I'm not sure if I made this already in this large group or just in a smaller group. I think it was in the small group. You know, if your group isn't totally confused as to what the path forward should be at this point, then you're not thinking hard enough. So you really need I would encourage you to tolerate some chaos. There's a community organizing tools called Art of Hosting. And they have something called the chaotic path, and it's between chaos and order. And you kind of try and stay in the middle there on this pathway that you don't want to have absolute control. So this is what we're doing, but you can't have chaos. So we try and through this process, keep us on that path of gathering the information we need, but tolerating a certain amount of chaos solutions. And so but pretty soon we're going to get to then what they call the groan zone of, okay, now what? But that's still a couple of weeks down the road here. At this point, I encourage you to be open to different approaches, be a sponge in terms of gathering information, and keep on watching the event blog, and you're going to get a great taste for a lot of the topics that we have here, and try and find some good resources that we can pass on to you on each of these topics. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Nancy.